Okay, in this video I want to explain why after nearly 50 years, because I'm 50 years old now, and ever since I learned anything in kindergarten, probably like 4 or 5 years old, whatever age I was, when they started teaching me that the earth was a sphere, a globe circling the sun. So anyways, for all that time, my whole life, I've believed it, and just like everybody else, and it seems logical. We've seen all these things from NASA, but recently I've come to believe that whole thing is false. So why would a rational person believe such an idiotic thing that the earth is not a sphere? The whole model we've been taught, the heliocentric model, is not correct. It's actually an intentional deception. Well, first of all, you have to understand that as a spiritual person, I believe the Bible is true, and the Bible teaches that Lucifer is the god of this world. He's the illegitimate god. He's not a real god. There's only one God, but he's an illegitimate small g God that people are deluded by, and the whole world is deluded by what he puts out into the world. He has power over this world. So that being said, I mean, there's plenty of spiritual Christians out there that would agree with that, okay, but they might say, okay, I agree with that, but I don't agree that the earth is not a sphere. It's obviously a sphere. I mean, we even have pictures from NASA and all this evidence for it, okay? And that's the same thing I probably would have said prior to learning what I've learned. So I want to try to recall, after inhaling chemtrails for 50 years, my memory's not so good, but over the last probably 2 years or somewhere in there is where I've been researching the idea that the earth is flat, which I don't necessarily, I'm not a flat earther. I don't like that label, but I would be considered a flat earther by people just because of what I believe. But the earth is obviously, it's got hills and mountains and valleys and all. It's not flat, but relatively speaking, it's flat as opposed to it being a spherical globe. That is the conclusion I've come to at this point. But why would I believe that is the first thing is I didn't want to look into it originally. My friend, actually, first I heard about it was from Bob Duco back in the early 2000s when I used to listen to conservative talk radio. I'd listen to his show, and when he was making a derogatory remark towards someone, he would mention the Flat Earth Society, and he would say, "What are you, from the Flat Earth Society?" Like making an insult to someone. So then I thought, what? There's a Flat Earth Society that's been around 500 years that still believes the earth is flat? I thought that was pretty crazy. Later I found out recently that is just a shill organization in order to get people to not really research whether the earth is flat, because they put out ridiculous ideas. When you start looking into it, you're like, oh, okay, I want to see what these flat earthers believe. You go to the Flat Earth Society and they start telling you all these ridiculous things that are to lead you away from researching it any further, because it's just so ridiculous, the things that they're going to tell you. So anyways, there's other shills out there, like I believe Mark Sargent is a shill, and his red-haired girlfriend that I don't know if she's his girlfriend, but his friend that's a woman, and she has red hair, and I can't think of her name. Flat Earther people that have been researching Flat Earth would know what I'm talking about. And there's a guy on YouTube, his name's ODD, YouTube name, and he put out a video showing how they had put out cell phone apps about Flat Earth prior to their being in the Flat Earth movement. They already were preparing to their shill. They're out there to deceive. That's my conclusion. You have to watch that video. He shows how they're shills in that video. Anyways, maybe I'll put a link in below. Point is that I'm trying to explain that there are shills out there, and you have to wade through all the shills before you can get to any real evidence. So what happened to me is a couple of years ago, my friend that I hadn't talked to in many years told me he believed the earth was flat. And I just was like, okay. So, I was like, yeah, right. I just like, I don't agree with them, but it doesn't make me mad. Some people get upset and ticked off, like, how can you be such an idiot? You believe the earth is flat? What's wrong with you? I just was like, okay, you believe the earth is flat, whatever, So then he never showed me any kind of evidence for what he believed, but except for one time we were at the Santa Monica Pier. He said, look out there on the horizon, you can see it's not curved, it's flat. And I said, yeah, well, that's because the earth is so big, it's not starting to curve until beyond the horizon, so you can't see it. That was my thinking, because I was so brainwashed to believe that the earth is a sphere. That's what I thought. So that was the only evidence he ever showed. And then he told me that his brother also believed the earth was flat, which I'm kind of acquainted with his brother, but just over the phone because he lives in Pennsylvania. And so there's two people that believe the earth was flat. And then my sister also eventually she told me she thinks the earth is flat because she said she wanted to understand why all these people would believe the earth was flat. She started looking into it and she discovered their evidence of why they believe that, and she came to the conclusion that the earth is flat also. So I said, that's when I said, okay, maybe the earth really is flat, because another person I had seen that believed the earth was flat was Rob Skiba, and I used to watch some of his videos about the Nephilims and all these things, and so I would go across his channel and I saw these flat earth, he had these flat earth diagrams of like this God's terrarium, and you'd be scrolling through YouTube and you'd see this video that said God's terrarium, and it looked so ridiculous, flat earth, God's terrarium, and I'm like, oh man, this is so, why would he believe that, So I would just skip over those videos and just watch his other videos. So anyways, but then when I said, she believes it's flat, it's probably flat. So I said it probably is true, but I don't want to research it. I don't even want to know, because I don't want to be one of those idiotic flat earthers. I didn't want to do that. I didn't think, because if you know anything about conspiracies, this is a process of years and like 2 decades of at least a decade of becoming of going through the conspiracies of, let's say, 9/11 conspiracy, the JFK conspiracy, the pharmaceutical industry conspiracy, which was really the first one I went into because my mother had got cancer back in the 90s. Even when the internet was in its infancy, she had some friends that convinced her, or somehow she came up with the idea of going a different route than chemotherapy, and she just juice fasted and did all these health, she went the health route rather than the medical route, and she cured herself. So, and that's what got me on the track to start understanding the pharmaceutical industry corruption. And then you just watch any commercials nowadays. If they would have showed any of these TV commercials for all these drugs they're trying to sell people, if they would have showed them when I was a kid, people would have been like, they would have been appalled. They would have been like, are you kidding me? I'm never going to take a drug like that. If my ears start bleeding and I have a bowel movement that causes my liver to be removed and I see it in the toilet, contact my doctor immediately. Stuff like that. It's like, those are the side effects. So I don't understand how anyone would take pharmaceutical drugs. But anyways, getting back, so you go through all these conspiracies, you start learning this, and it's so funny because you don't, whenever a new one comes up, like from the pharmaceutical industry, I'm totally convinced it's completely corrupt. It's so evil and corrupt. And then it comes to 9/11, and the same friend that said the earth was flat, he told me, the Twin Towers, they had explosives in them. They were destroyed by explosives. And I was like, yeah, right. And so, but then he says, look, I got a video you can see. I said, okay, I'll watch it. So then I watched it, and he showed all the explosions in the lower floors, and it showed Building 7, which is, if you don't know, another 50-story building that was destroyed on September 11th at 4:20 in the afternoon, that completely turned to dust. And it shows how they were destroyed by explosives. So why wasn't that told to us by our news? So once you learn that, then your whole world changes. You get a totally new worldview. And so just to come into the flat earth from knowing none of these things, it's practically impossible. It's a process. This took like years, like that decade. Okay, so anyways, you understand that the world is a matrix of deception. If you've ever seen the movie The Matrix, he couldn't comprehend where reality was at first, but the reality was that he was inside that pink goo, and his warmth was, he was a part of the machine, but he thought he was going to work every day. He thought he was doing all these things. He thought he understood reality, but his reality was he was not doing those things. It was just false. That's an analogy of the matrix we're in such a deception. Everything we learned is a lie. History, geography, I mean, you name it, everything. The heliocentric model of the universe, it's a deception. I'm going to get to the evidence of why I came to believe that. So it got to the point where my sister said she believed it was flat, and I said, actually what I said to her, she said, yeah, I believe it's flat, and I said, okay, just don't tell anybody. So I said, that was my thing, you tell anybody this, they're going to think you're a fool, but I don't care what people think. Obviously, that's why I'm making this video. I want to give a testimony of why I believe it, so I can refer people to it who say, why would you believe such an idiotic thing? So I didn't want to research it for like 6 months because I said once I believed it was probably true, I didn't want to research it because the steak tastes good in the Matrix. If you ever seen the movie, you can understand there was one guy that wanted to go back in the Matrix because he didn't want to deal with reality, because the Matrix, at least there's a comfort in there. Ignorance is bliss. So that was like the last segment of the Matrix that I had left in me was the heliocentric model. The Earth is a globe, space is out there, and all these things. And so I didn't want to research it, so I didn't for 6 months. And then after 6 months, I went to, I said, you know, and I'm just going to, I don't know what prompted me to do it, but I did it. So I looked at Rob Skiba's website because I knew he's a Christian, and I figured he's going to show me some real evidence. Because at first I just started searching it on YouTube, and I watched all these videos that would say, oh, 2,000% proof, 1,000% proof of the Earth is flat, or 1,000% proof the Earth is flat, and different videos like these. And these are what popped up first, and they had absolutely no evidence, nothing convincing whatsoever, no science, no experiments, nothing. It's like ridiculous. So this is because Google and YouTube, if you don't understand the conspiracy, the government conspiracy to suppress true information, real information, then you're never gonna learn anything true. Okay, you have to understand the occult. You have to understand the enemy is Lucifer. You have to understand these things. These people are Luciferians. They love Lucifer. They worship him. Okay, and they suppress true information, and they teach us lies, and they reverse engineer what God has created to make it look like it's real, because there really is a sun, there really is a moon, there really are stars, but they reverse engineer everything to tell you they're the opposite of what they actually are. But anyways, I digressed a little bit there, so let me get back to what I was saying. Okay, I saw these videos, 1,000% proof, and there was no evidence, nothing. So I went to Rob Skiba, and when I went to Rob Skiba's website, all I saw was he had all these Mark Sargent videos in front of his videos, like that you had to wade through. I'm wading through all these videos, Mark Sargent videos, that's talking about he believes. I sat through like one of his videos. It was long and drawn out, didn't show any evidence of the Earth being flat, and he talked about how he believed the government is putting lava inside the Earth. That lava isn't natural; it's just put there by the government. It's ridiculous, you know. That's what shills do. They put out stupid information to make you to shut this off. Say, why should I even look into this any further? Okay. He also would say stupid stuff like the sun is a projection, the moon is a projection, the stars are projections. This is ridiculous. The sun is not a projection. It's giving off its own heat. It's more than likely electric. That's what Nikola Tesla taught. He taught the universe is electric. Okay, and if you look at the sky, we have lightning. There's a new discovery of sprites, which are high altitude lightning, which is 70 miles up by the dome that cannot be penetrated, where beyond the dome is water, and heaven is above the water. The waters which be above the heavens, the Bible talks about. That's why the sky is blue. We'll get into some of this stuff eventually, but I just wanted to give my testimony of what happened. Okay, so why I believe it. So I had to eventually just get off of Rob Skiba's website. After I sat through like hours of ridiculous videos, even on his website. So if Rob Skiba ever hears this, maybe he changed it by now. It was probably like a year ago, so I don't know. But anyways, so what actually ended up coming by Eric DeBay's website, or not his website, his YouTube videos, about 200 proofs the Earth is flat or something like that. So I stopped watching that, and he's showing all these train tracks that are going on and on flat, you know, showing canals that are going on flat and level, train tracks flat and level for miles and miles. And he showed bridges that are going flat and level over flat level water for miles. And then he gave the formula for calculating the alleged curvature of the Earth, which is 8 inches per mile squared. And the mile is what is squared. And I had never heard that formula taught in my entire life. Okay, so I'm like, apparently that formula is from NASA. So they're the ones that say that is the correct formula for calculating the curvature of the Earth. And people debate that formula, apparently, from what I understand. Whatever, okay? So it's generally accepted that's the formula, 8 inches per mile squared. So when he said that, okay, 8 inches per mile squared, if you go 3 miles, that's 3 times 3 is 9 times 8 inches, that's 72 inches. So that's 6 feet in 3 miles of curvature there should be on the earth. That's just one example, I thought. But it also applies to water. So if you're on a 3-mile lake in a boat, there should be 6 feet of curvature from one shore to the opposite shore. That's 3 miles away. So it would bulge up in the middle by 3 feet. Okay, so the center of the lake, that 3-mile lake, is 3 feet higher than every shore all around it. So there's like a bulge in the middle of the lake. But I didn't even think of it in those terms. I thought of it because I'm a fisherman. I've been fishing my whole life. I've been fishing Pacific Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. I've been on bays. I've been on water plenty of times, all over from the Atlantic to the Pacific. So I'm sitting there. I can see well over 3 miles. Okay, and I can see the bank. And you're going to tell me that this water that I'm on is curved more than 6 feet, or let's just go with 6 feet and 3 miles. So that would mean that I'm sitting out here. If I was on a lake, that's what convinced me. I'm like, there's no way the water is curved 6 feet. It's level. Water is level everywhere. This is the first thing that started to convince me. Okay, so I'm like, okay, so if I'm on a lake and I'm in the center of the lake and it's bulging up by 3 feet because it's a 3-mile radius lake and I'm in the center, I should start sloping down towards the shore of any direction because I'm in the center. Okay, it's sloping down. It'd be like a sled on snow or ice. It should just start sloping down towards the bank. That's what I'm thinking. Okay, I'm sitting there thinking I've looked over Lake Tahoe. I've been to Lake Tahoe many times. It's 21 miles across. I could see the opposite shore. 21 miles. I need a calculator to do the math, but that's like a lot of feet. I'll probably add it up and put it on there. You're going to tell me that Lake Tahoe is curved by like all these feet of curvature? Like, I don't know, is it like 200 feet or something like that? That's ridiculous. It's level, okay? People have done experiments with lasers and shined them over the lakes, frozen lakes of ice that are miles long, perfectly level. You can shine a laser across a lake and it's level. It's ridiculous to think it's curved. How could water that is in a lake be curved? It can't. It's impossible. So what we observe is the opposite of what is claimed, okay? So this is what started me to become unbrainwashed that the earth is a globe, is a sphere, okay? So then I started thinking to myself, if we're on a globe is a sphere, and you can look at a model of a globe and you can say, okay, where is sea level on a globe? Okay, because every elevation on earth is measured from sea level. I'm currently approximately 4,000 feet above sea level because I'm approximately 4,000 feet above sea level. I'm not. The sea is level. It's not measured from sea curve. And so if I go to the beach and I look out, I can see the sea is level. There's no curve on the horizon at all. If you believe it curves, that's because you believe it, like I did. I didn't see any curve when I was at the Santa Monica Pier. I just believed it curved eventually out there somewhere. No one can see it. You can't see any curve. No one can. No one can produce a curvature of the earth in reality. The only way you'll ever see a curvature of the earth is in fisheye lenses, which is what NASA uses whenever they go to high altitudes in their aeronautical vehicles. They go up high and they use fisheye lenses, and it appears like the earth is curved. There's no curvature. So these are the things that made me think, okay, the earth can't be curved. And then I started learning all these other evidences that the sun is not 93 million miles away. There's people that have taken pictures of it and videos of it being in the cloud. It's in the, so I could put that up in this video here too. You can see clearly the sun is inside the clouds. So if it's 93 million miles away, how could it also be in the clouds? And of course people will explain it away and say, oh, it's an optical illusion, it's the atmospheric, it's an atmosphere thing, and it just looks like it's in the clouds. It's not really in the clouds. Okay, well, you can believe that, but I'm just telling people why I believe the earth is not a sphere. It's a plane. It's a relatively level plane as opposed to it being a sphere. That's why the Wright brothers named their invention an aeroplane, because it flies over the flat plane of the earth. They didn't name it an arrow curve. Okay, so if the earth were a sphere planes would have to continually nose down as they fly. They could take off on a runway if it's a curve, and if they didn't constantly nose down, they would go out into what people believe is outer space, which I have come to find out that does not exist either. As insane as that sounds, it's true, because stars are not millions of light years away and they're huge like a sun. Stars are completely different than what the sun is. They're small lights and they're very close. They're relatively close, approximately 70 to 100 miles up. Anyways, so these are some of the things that I have come to understand, and so appreciate you taking the time to listen to me ramble on about this. But this is my testimony, and I just put it out there for anyone who's interested in hearing it. Why a rational man 50 years old would believe that the earth is not a sphere. It can't be. I no longer believe that. So this is why. And so if anyone wants to know why, especially, maybe people that know me, you can just refer to this video, and this is explaining it. So, and you can believe what you like. I hope you'll believe the truth, but it hurts to believe the truth. It's painful to come out of your programming. So, because that's why we've all been programmed. That's why they call it television programs, because it's programming you to believe lies, deception. It's a brainwashing. And actually, when I actually did realize that the earth was, flat, so to speak, I actually felt like when the realization of it all came into my brain, it felt like my brain was being washed. It was like a literal sensation of water just washing over my brain, because it was unbrainwashing me. I became brainwashed in like a matter of seconds. It flushed through my brain. It was an amazing experience, and I hung my head low because I thought, man, God's not a zillion miles away. He's right there. He's not a gazillion light years away. He's right above us. The sky is blue because it's water, and right above that water is where heaven is. That's where God is. It's not all these ridiculous gazillion light years away. Okay, so what I want to do now is shift gears and go away from my testimony so much and start trying to answer the questions that come up to people's minds, like that everyone obviously is going to ask right away, like, how can it be true? They landed on the moon, they got all these pictures from NASA, what about satellites, all these things. There's so many questions that need to be answered, obviously. But for me, the water, that was what really got me, to where it's impossible that it's a sphere. To me, that's enough. But I also learned tons and tons of other things. What about meteorites? What about all these other things that we see all the time? So I'll try to answer as many of those questions as I can, and if whatever I don't answer, then people can leave comments. They're interested. If anyone has watched this video this long, then they're obviously interested, and if you have any questions, I'll be glad to, if I get time, make a new video about answering your question or whatnot. If I'm trying to fit tons of information on here, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of reasons why the earth cannot be a sphere, and I could literally make this video 6 hours, but I'm trying to condense it down. So what I want to do is show a video of a guy who speaks way better than I do. I found a re-upload of his video on YouTube, and I haven't been able to find the actual guy. He says his name at the front of the video, and I searched him on Google and on YouTube, and I couldn't find him. So if anyone knows who this guy is and can get me his YouTube channel, I'd appreciate it. And this guy is going to explain about the behavior of water to where I think anybody should be able to understand it better than what I have already explained. So here it is.
Nick Barella here. I wanted to put together just a short video to tell you the main reason why I believe the earth is flat, and it is flat. There are literally, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of reasons why I believe that the earth is flat, that it's not a globe. But the number one for me is water. Water is always flat. Water always finds its level. All the oceans and the streams and the creeks run down into the basins, which is what we call oceans. Water always takes the shape of its container. So water is really what does it for me. Now, this is according to NASA. So this is NASA's official website talking about the earth. You'll see down here it says that the diameter of the earth at the equator is 12,756 kilometers. So if we convert kilometers to miles, that's 7,926 miles. Now, here is a scale model of the Earth. According to NASA, as you just saw, the diameter of the Earth is 7,926 miles. So at the equator from one side to the other, 7,000, 926 miles. Now, according to the History Channel, the longest river in the world is the Nile River, which is actually almost 5,000 miles in total length. But as the crow flies, you can see it here, that the total length is about 2,400 miles from the source to the outlet. As we just saw, the length of the Nile River, and this is as the crow flies, from the source point to the ocean that it empties out into, is 2,400 miles, about 30% of the Earth's diameter. So if we take NASA's word for it that it's 8 inches per mile squared, this is what the math looks like. 2,400 miles times 2,400 miles times 8 inches. That gets us the total amount in inches. We divide by 12 to get the total amount in feet. Then we divide by 5,280 to get the total amount in miles. And there should be 727 miles of total curvature. We divide that by 2, and that means there would be 363 miles to the midpoint or the peak. The Nile River would have to ascend 363 miles, or a total of over 720 miles from the beginning to the end. It would look like this. If you see this here, this would be the source point. It would have to curve up 363 miles to the midpoint, and then it would have to curve down 363 miles to the end point. That's impossible. Totally impossible. Just to put that in perspective, that would be the equivalent of 1,950 Eiffel Towers. You know what? I don't even have, these are all representing the Eiffel Tower. I don't even have enough on the screen. I think I'm short a few. I got tired of cutting and pasting. So it's very interesting, but water is always flat. Water always finds its level. And gravity is still a theory. The full name for gravity is the universal theory of gravity. It's an invisible, supernatural, all-powerful force that does not care if we're moral. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, I think we've been lied to. The earth is flat. Water is flat. I found another article that just confirms what I already believe, which is the earth is flat, and there's so much evidence, it's really overwhelming. But I was on LinkedIn looking at different industry news articles, and I came across this article that was talking about the Great Lakes and how they function like a slow-moving river together, which I thought was interesting. So I found the link to the original article, which was featured in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin Journal, and I'll put it in the link below the video. But basically what it says here, you'll see, and I'm reading from this highlighted portion, it says, they might be called the Great Lakes, but the 5 bodies of water are, in a sense, one giant slow-motion river flowing west to east, with each lake dumping like a bucket into the next until all the water is gathered in the St. Lawrence River and tumbles into the Atlantic Ocean, which sounds reasonable. I mean, it sounds intuitive. And then it goes on and talks about how they got there, tens of thousands of years ago and whatnot. But here's what's interesting. So then you get to this graphic, and it says 5 lakes, but one slow-moving river. And it talks about Lake Superior, which the width is about 379 miles, you can see right here. And it's at an elevation above sea level, which is 0 feet, sea level, at 601.7 feet above sea level, because the sea is indeed level. And then it points out that there's a dam right here that basically locks the water out and allows water to drain down to Lake Huron, which is 578 feet above sea level. And so the dam distance in the river is about 60, and then we get the width of Lake Huron, which is 223 miles. I mean, this continues on. And then we got Niagara Falls pointed out here, which is a distance of 35 miles roughly, where Niagara Falls happens. And long story short, from the beginning, so the westernmost point of Lake Superior to getting into the Atlantic Ocean, they have down here is a total of 2,212 miles. And you can see that along the way, it's level, and then it drops down after a dam, it's level, and then we got Niagara Falls, and then it drops down, and then a series of dams. But what you see consistent is that the water is level when undisturbed. And then we get to sea level, which again is 0 feet. It is the base. It's the basin. And so here's what's interesting. If we use the simple calculation that NASA gives us, which is the Earth curves at 8 inches per mile squared, you do this: 2,212 miles times 2,212 miles times 8 inches. And that gets us the total amount of curvature in inches. So we divide by 12. That's the total amount in feet. And so you divide by 5,280, and that gets you the total curvature in miles. We should be asking, how come this graphic doesn't show from the source point to the ocean 617 miles? That's miles of curvature. There should be, from the beginning to end, 617 miles of curvature. So I went to this website that's actually set out to debunk that the Earth is flat, and it has a curvature calculation, and it talks about how the horizon is obscured by the curvature and all this stuff. So just to verify my numbers, 2,212 miles, and let's say we're starting at the level of the water, which is 0 feet in height instead of standing. And what we see here is that maybe my calculation's a little bit off, maybe this is more exact. There should be a 675 miles of curvature. If we look at this point from the beginning, now remember, from the beginning, the westernmost part of Lake Superior to the ocean, that water should traverse 675 miles of curvature. But that's not what we see. What we see is level bodies of water to the dam points, waterfalls and rivers, to level bodies of water, to waterfalls and other dam points. And that's because water is always flat. Now, NASA wants us to believe that all the large bodies of water, like you can barely see right here, the Great Lakes, that those bodies follow the curvature of the Earth, but they don't. They follow the curvature in this graphic, which is level when undisturbed. So just more proof, we are not spinning on a ball. The Earth is flat, water is flat, and what the Bible says about the makeup of the universe is indeed true. Heaven above, earth below, and hell below us. I was on Google Earth and I came across something that I thought was pretty amazing, and that is that when you draw a path between 2 points on Google Earth, you can then ask it to show you the elevation cross-section between those 2 points, so you can kind of see the rise and fall of the landscape like a topographical map. So just to test it out, I drew a path from my dad's house in Denver, Colorado, to my house in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I want to show you something very interesting. When I choose to show the elevation cross-section, you can see it's basically this red line. The starting point at my dad's house is 5,394 feet above sea level. And he's in Denver, Colorado, which is the mile-high city, so that's what you would expect. But then as you move east, and you can see the red arrow move east as I go that direction, the landscape starts to change where the elevation drops down and continues to drop. You go from the foothills of the Rocky Mountains into the plains of Colorado, Kansas, into Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and then finally you get into Cincinnati, Ohio, to my house, which is 764 feet above sea level. So what's interesting is Google Earth wants us to believe that the landscape makes this curve as shown here. But the elevation cross section actually shows that the landscape of the United States from my dad's house to my house follows this path. And most of us, when we were in elementary school, learned that the Rocky Mountains, which is close to where my dad lives, is the continental divide that divides the rainfall from east to west. I'm pretty sure when I was a kid, I've been to the Milner Pass, which is about 2 miles above sea level. And there's a sign that says the Great Divide separates drainage to the Atlantic from the drainage to the Pacific. it traverses America from Alaska almost to Cape Horn. And so that would make sense if the landscape does follow this topographical cross-section. I wanted to see what would happen when you look at the elevation cross-section over a great body of water. So starting at the northernmost point, as far as I can get, of Lake Michigan, and then traveling south, you can see that red line here, that the body of Lake Michigan is 574 feet above sea level, and it's level. There's no change in elevation, there's no curve. This cross-section shows what an undisturbed body of water looks like, and that's level. We know that to be true. There's three properties of liquids. They have mass, they take up space, and they always take the shape of their container. And so Lake Michigan from north to south is 574 feet above sea level. So then just to do another check, I wanted to see what the elevation profile would look like for Hudson Bay in Canada. Relatively a large undisturbed body of water. And you'll see here from the westernmost side, it shows an elevation of -2 feet below sea level, and it's level for a distance of over 879 miles. So what does all that mean? What I believe it means is that water is flat, water seeks its own level, therefore the idea that we're spinning on a globe is absolutely impossible.